When an employer wanted to get rid of migrant workers because it was so easy to get rid of workers, when the workers came with a contract, a work permit of 3 years, and whenever the employer wanted to get rid of the migrant worker, he or she would just have to phone the passport and immigration office, and then the police would come and take the migrant to the airport detention center. Mauritius has emerged as a major exporter of textile and ready-made garments, and the textile industry is considered as one of the major catalysts of the Mauritian industrial revolution. And for the past 4 decades, the Mauritian textile industry has spearheaded structural transformation of Mauritian economy. Right? And this sector has acted as an engine of economic growth, attracting foreign direct investment, creating employment, and also strengthening the manufacturing sector. And today, Mauritius is exporting to major markets in the US, in Europe, and even in South Africa. But the thing is that there's also the reverse side of the coin, right? And people always speak about how Mauritius is a paradise island, but we're also facing a demographic crisis because the national policies have been encouraging the youngsters to leave the country because the youngsters have education now and they are looking for greener pastures elsewhere. In Western countries, Europe, Australia, Canada, and the USA, right? And this has created a lack of labor in Mauritius. And to fill in that void, what happens is that the Mauritian government is encouraging the influx of migrant workers. And this is the problem today. Beyond the demographic crisis, today we have so many discrimination that the migrant workers are facing. And particularly in the textile industry, which employs mostly women, we've seen that more and more workers are suffering from discriminatory laws. For instance, the local workers have benefit from the laws, and the migrant workers do not benefit from same. I can show you examples. Many of the issues that we face on a daily basis is that migrant workers suffer from wage theft. And why is that? Because technically, the migrant worker, when he or she comes to Mauritius, he or she doesn't have to contribute for social protection. So even if they work 3 or even 10 years, he or she won't be getting any pension. He won't retire in Mauritius. So he or she doesn't have to contribute in social protection. And for the employer, that lessens the cost, right? And this is happening over and over again. Occupational health and safety. We understand that it is multidimensional, multifaceted, right? We have the physical aspect, the mental and psychosocial aspect. So beyond the physical, the electrical fire hazards, beyond all the physical hazards, I would like to comment a little bit more on the psychosocial hazard because this goes often unnoticed by most people, right? And first of all, when we talk about wage theft, right, this is unacceptable and almost inadmissible that today you have 2 workers doing the same time of job, equal work, equal pay, but it's not respected, right? And what happens is that this wage theft causes extreme mental trauma for the worker because the worker comes to an unknown country, doesn't know how things work, doesn't know how the authorities works, doesn't know how the law works. The first thing that our union did is to make membership free for all contractual, migrant, and precarious workers. So what happens is that we build a solidarity chain that is implemented by local workers. When they contribute to our union, this money is used to finance all activities covering precarious workers, migrant workers, and contractual workers. If we can't go to the migrant workers, we make the migrant workers come to us. We want to be the referral point in Mauritius concerning migrant issues and labor issues, right? And what happens is that we have migrant workers coming from all over the world. So one of the biggest problems that we face today is the language barrier, right? And personally, one thing that I do when I welcome one migrant worker is I always end by telling him or her to go back to their dormitory, to go back to the factory and spread the word around everything. And we always give flyers, pamphlets, and contact numbers, little business cards for our union to spread information. And we always welcome migrant workers any time of the day at our union. Today, as of right now, this is the biggest issue that we face at our union, is that trade unions do not have access to work sites. This is one of our major challenges today, and we always want to have access, but in order to have access, we have to get permission first. So this is kind of the conundrum today, where to get permission, we have to ask the employer, and whenever we ask the employer, he or she already corrects every wrongs, right? There's no surprise visits, there's no surprise checks. So this is how we get a bit in a loophole. It's a vicious cycle, really. Fewer and fewer youngsters are interested in union. Why? Because there are already laws, legislations already put in place. The bigger fights have already been fought, right? So the youngsters, they already benefit from all the facilities that the older generations did, right? But what happens in our union, we have approximately 25,000 members, but this is inclusive of migrant workers. And since we have free membership, it's kind of difficult to put an exact number on our membership, right? Because when the migrant workers come, they just sign 1 rupee. It's 1 rupee formality. We don't even take the 1 rupee from them, all right? And what we've achieved in our union, the CTSP, we make sure that we use one of our most powerful tools, which is demonstration. We always go to the streets, because this is how the labor shows that it has the power to make to put political pressure and for us to get decisions, right? And what are our major victories recently? Long ago, migrant workers couldn't have membership in our unions, right? Because they were contractual workers. They came with a work permit for 3 years, so they couldn't be permanent members of our unions. So what we did through exactly demonstrations and manifestations and lobbying, sending letters again and again. It was not, maybe these fights could take 10 to 15 years, right? And what happened is that we had a simple word in legislation. We've changed legislation to add employer-employee relationship. And this made the huge difference, because long ago, the legislations made mention of workers. It didn't make mention of local or migrant workers. And the thing is, when in negotiations or even in court, we have a problem of terminology. We always fight upon interpretation, right? So whenever, now with the addition of the employer-employee relationship, it makes the whole difference, because either if you are local or migrant, there is employer-employee relationship, so you're covered by this. This is one of our greatest wins. Long before, when an employer wanted to get rid of migrant workers, because it was so easy to get rid of workers, when the workers came with a contract, a work permit of 3 years, and whenever the employer wanted to get rid of the migrant worker, he or she would just have to phone the Passport and Immigration Office, and then the police would come and take the migrant to the airport detention center, and then on the first flight back to his country, he's be gone without any clearance. So throughout the years, we've been lobbying, we've been putting pressure on government to introduce that in order to expatriate a migrant worker back to his or her country, you'd have to get clearance first from the Ministry of Labour. So this kind of dissociation between governmental institution concerning work, so you have the Passport and Immigration Office under the PMO, Prime Minister's Office, and then on the other side you have the Ministry of Labour. So it's kind of dissociated. So with the introductions of the clearance from Ministry of Labour, we've been able to bridge that gap. And often what we've seen is that there is a huge gap between what's written in text, in legislation, and what's really happening in real life. So we are constantly trying to bridge that gap and to be able to reconcile the two. Other things that we've been able to achieve is that we've, in collaboration with ASUS and the Anti-Slavery International, with IndustriALL, we've been able to set up the MRC, the Migrant Resource Center, which is basically a safe place for the migrants, because in Mauritius we don't have any shelters for the migrants who suffers from any kind of discrimination, right? From any kind of violence. So we've been able to introduce that in our office, in our union, and what happens is that whenever the migrant faces any issue, he or she is most welcome in the MRC. So MRC is a place where the migrant, first of all, is safe, is free. He can come anytime to gather information, and we often conduct awareness campaign and education about their rights.